I did not feel secure when I went into Donnell Hall this morning and there were two bomb-sniffing dogs outside, but I did show them this new DVD that I got in my box, which is Nonviolence Includes Animals. So incidentally, it's from PETA, one of the organizations that we discussed as having a somewhat ambiguous approach to things, and it is here if somebody wants to borrow it. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, to see it. Let's see, today, if nobody is in my office around 12:45, 12:50, I'll probably leave because I have to go to San Diego this afternoon. So, part of a whirlwind tour that's going on. So if you need to see me in my office hour today and you wouldn't make it by then, give me a call. So I'll hang around and wait for you. Okay. Sorry? Oh, that also might happen, and I have to go to that. No, we haven't heard about that yet. We're getting a wonderful turnout for the Meta Open House, including a friend is coming all the way from Germany. So those of you who sent out emails to do the invitation for us, they worked. We have a few more copies here if you'd like to put them around or frame them or donate them to the Museum of Modern Art or something like that. And how many of you are thinking of coming? Okay, very good. And tomorrow, I want to be sure that you know about the event at La Peña, which is going to be a presentation by someone from the MST movement that we were talking about. That's the last thing that we were saying. You of course, will be there, Amy. You actually have. Does someone remember? I forgot to pick up the poster on the way. Is that 7 p.m.? Does someone remember that? Well, anyway, it's at La Peña, and you can call them and find out. Yeah, I don't have it here. Also, there is an organization called the Friends of MST. Most very large local peace organizations like Sarvodaya in Sri Lanka, which is very, very large, and which is one of the few that I consider to be very well balanced between constructive program and obstructive program. They have Friends of Sarvodaya based down in Southern California. And here's a phone number for the Friends of MST. It's 831. In case you want to go into it further, you write a paper on it or something. Ask for Juan Reardon. Actually, let me give you. Reardon at Yahoo. That stands for yahoo.com, if you want to find out more information at the MST. So the last thing we said about it, let me see if I can go there quite yet. Yeah, I think so. I got to get back to two quick announcements. But the last thing we said about the MST was, and I showed you that clip so that you could see that they don't really have their act together when they are attacked, and they have been attacked a lot. Last I read a number on this, about 1,000 cemeteries, landless workers have been killed. When David Hartzell, you remember, was here talking to us a while ago, when he was at the World Social Forum in Porto Alegre, he was taken out to visit some MST camps, and he saw people living by the side of the highway who've never even gotten into a camp, much less gotten a title to it. And those people are particularly susceptible to being attacked, even though they're not doing anything very obstreperous yet. And as you saw, they didn't know what to do. They throw sticks back. The police are calling them cowards. They run around. So I would give the MST possibly an A+. We'll have to think about that. Somewhere between an A and an A+ for a constructive program, and somewhere in the low D range for knowing how to deal with actual conflict when it happens, the obstructive part of the program, obstructive or the conflict management part of it. This is not to say that certain events haven't occurred where nonviolent principles haven't kicked in. In one famous case, the police came to arrest some men who were in a camp, and the women just got in their way. I know a case very much like this that actually happened in northern Mexico recently, but the women just stood there and said, "You're going to arrest the men, you have to arrest us first." And macho though they may be, well, perhaps because they are so macho, they felt that arresting women was not their thing, and they were defeated by that. So it's not that they haven't had some sort of visceral experience that nonviolent interactions can happen, but nobody has sat them down and said, "You know what that was? It's called la no violencia. Here's how it works. Here's how you can enhance it and institutionalize it." And because of, here we talked about this in a positive light, the fact that the movement has developed entirely new grassroots democratic structures of consensus building and so forth. The negative part of that is you can't go in and say, "I have something I want to share with you," and you get their attention. So we've been trying and trying. David Hartzell has tried. We have somebody who lives down there, offered to translate my books. I've sent them emails. We have people come here, but it's hard. It's like a big spongy kind of thing where you can't get one message to them. At times, I can see why President Bush said it would be a lot easier if this place were a dictatorship. Because you remember, during the gas crisis in the 70s, that was the first one, the warning sign which went ignored, Soviet Union immediately cut their gas consumption by 30%. Similarly, overnight they stopped smoking. Why? Because you have Stalin says, "Yet, no smoking. The whole country has to stop." So I'm not in favor of this kind of system, calling it nonviolent. But the flip side of that is when you have a very non-centralized system, it's hard to get even good information into it sometimes. So that's their story. Now, a couple of announcements more and we can get started. We're started already. This is all fascinating. I know that. There is an outfit which has got this very interesting constructive-obstructive program going, which is to rebuild homes on the West Bank and Gaza, because Gaza is a different story now, to rebuild homes in the West Bank that have been destroyed by Israeli military authority. And the first house that they're going to rebuild is the house belonging to this family, whose name I can't remember, but it is the house that Rachel Corrie lost her life trying to protect. So you're all aware of that episode. So it's a 24-year-old American activist from Washington State with ISM, the International Solidarity Movement. She was standing in front of this huge, enormous bulldozer, and the driver just rode over her, killed her. He actually passed over her, and then he reversed and passed over her again. And my guess is that this was a deliberate murder, because it was immediately followed by two other murders, one of an Australian and one of an English man, who were both part of the ISM. And I think there's reasons to believe that this actually was an order that went down that killed those internationals. However that may be, this young woman lost her life and has become a martyr and a symbol. And the first home that these people are going to rebuild is that very home that she was trying to protect. The home is actually going to open on May 22nd, if you're looking for a place this summer. And here's the point. Yes, there was a point, and I am getting to it. The point is that the organization that's building these homes is using a new technology to have a telephone conference. And the first conference will be May 2nd probably at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and there'll be a panel consisting of Professor or Dr. Iyad El-Sarraj, who is a well-known Gazan psychiatrist who's very much in favor of nonviolence, and some American professor that they've gotten from Berkeley who also has nonviolence as his subject. So those two people will be on that phone call, and they're planning to have 500 people listening in and then calling in with comments and so forth. So I'm going to be giving you the phone number next week, but I'm asking you now, you might want to block out that date, May 2nd, 9 a.m. Okay, so I think it's a very good mechanism and a very interesting way. This is something which suits me very well because it has that blend. It's a blend in two ways, really. It's a blend of symbol and concrete action, and concrete, no pun intended, but yeah, literally. And it's also very symbolic. Of course, it's a concrete thing with symbolic resonance, which for me is a powerful way to go. And it's a blend of constructive and obstructive because they're building something, person needs a home, but also it's illegal to do that, so they're in their face. And this brings us to my next little pre-lecture point. I hope some of you got to see that clip that Sami Awad sent out. It was very moving. And as I was watching it and actually getting pretty emotional, but I got that under control. Don't worry, I won't do anything embarrassing up here. But as I was watching it, it suddenly struck me we have a very interesting gray area here again for us to talk about, and we've gotten pretty good at these sophisticated distinctions. Okay, here are people taking the steel girder. Okay, for those of you who didn't see it, what's happened is the town of Bilin has been having a regular, almost unbroken series of demonstrations to prevent the IDF-protected construction crews to come in and build the wall, which in that particular town is very illegal and cuts off the town from their agricultural land, which is devastating. 70% of Palestinian villages in that area are going to be affected in that way. But apparently it's been spreading to other towns, other communities, and this is when it's happened south of Bethlehem, which is handy because Sami Awad and the Holy Land Trust, or whatever they call it now, is headquartered in Bethlehem, and he's the nephew of Mubarak Awad, and so this is very nonviolent heritage that comes in here. So they had this demonstration. They walked down to a part of the wall that had just been poured, and they unstaked from the ground a huge I-beam, a steel girder about 15 feet long, looked like, and a whole bunch, and they picked this thing up and they just used it as a battering ram and smashed it into the wall until finally the concrete started to break up. You see the rebar poking through and everything, and then of course, over the hill comes these IDF soldiers, and then they get into this melee. So here's my question. This is a form of property destruction. Okay? Are we okay with it? What are the considerations we should be thinking about here? Okay, we'll start with you, Mike, unless with you. Okay, Mike. Yeah.
It's okay to burn down Nazi camps.
Okay, it's okay to burn down Nazi camps. I would not say that to an Israeli, actually. They're a little touchy on that particular point. But seriously, what you're saying is, if an institution itself has a purely destructive purpose, then it becomes a double negative to destroy it, and so it's a positive. Andrea?
The wall is property destruction as well because it's split in the
Yes. Yes, it would be self-defense. You're protecting your own property. Yeah, that's about how I would put it. The wall itself is an incursion onto your property. It's in a way, it's your property. It's like when they were burning their in the Indian freedom struggle, when there was a big boycott against imported cloth. People started burning their trousers. They would take them off first and then throw them on a pile and burn them. And we decided that back then that was not really property destruction. It was renunciation because it was your property. So this is what the issue hinges on here. Yeah.
I don't think there's a problem with it, but
Okay.
my problem is more the fact in the article they call it symbolic destruction, and it's
Yeah.
not symbolic. Like
Yeah.
you're actually destroying the wall, and they call it symbolic destruction.
Yes.
So I think it's sort of like false pretenses.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought of that. But to call it symbolic when you've got chunks of concrete falling out, it's certainly not symbolic in the sense that we object to. That is only symbolic. It is a physical act. What they meant is this in itself is not going to slow down the wall materially because the IDF will just come up and rebuild it again. But still, if you recall, 1942, Gandhi wanted to launch Satyagraha. The timing had come for that, but the British were occupied somewhere in Europe with some other little thing that happened. So he decided to have a Satyagraha of one. So again, it was Vinoba Bhave who went out to do it to get arrested. Again, it wasn't going to shut down the regime by itself, but it was a way of saying this is what we can do, this is our attitude, and we feel is the appropriate action, but we're letting you off the hook for right now. So yeah, I think it would be wrong to call it symbolic in our sense. Shannon? Yes. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, I'm very happy with this discussion. We really have covered exactly what I think we should try to get out of it, and very efficiently. On the negative side, we're not too worried about it. I think we could probably think of 7 or 8 acts of violence that are more offensive than these Palestinians trying to block the destruction of their own property with an illegal wall. But what Shannon is saying is, while this may be the best thing that you could do in the circumstances, it's not ideal. Because for the sake, I'm going to take what you said, Shannon, and escalate it a little bit and say, not just converting the object into some kind of constructive use, which would be ideal. I'm not saying it was possible now. The Palestinians could not say, oh, we'll make this into a chicken coop or something like that, because they just don't have the means to do that. But because of time constraints, the best is not achievable. What they're doing is probably the best that was achievable. But ideally, you would want not only to convert the object, but the people. So ideally, you would want to exercise persuasion, not coercion, so that they themselves would say, the hell with it, we don't want to build this wall anymore. That's the best way. And the difference between being able to do the best thing and being able to do what you have to do in the circumstances is, once again, often one of time. Here's the wall. If they sit around and by the time they convince the Israelis not to build that wall, they will have starved to death several times over because of that. And it's a lot. Concrete, as you may know, gets harder and harder as it sets. So it's good to destroy it now before it's for a couple of years. So this leaves, hold on just 1 second. I had this thought this morning I'd like to put before you, which is we've been at this now. In some cases, you've been studying nonviolence pretty intensely for about a year, and for others of you, you caught up very quickly. I'm going to suggest that as a thought exercise, there's a couple of seats right here. I'm going to suggest is, why don't we tackle what is probably the mother of all nonviolent confrontations going on in the world today, which is the Israeli-Palestinian one, because if it could get resolved, everything would be easier in the Middle East. Our friend Paul, who we're going to hear from in a little while, would not have to go back to Iraq if we could get that situation resolved, because we would be then saying a whole new story to the Muslim world. So it's a critically important conflict, and you could look upon it as a conflict that escalated all the way up to the top and got stuck. So it's just this endless back and forth and back and forth. No rehumanization is happening. It's life and death going on at this piddling level, in terms of numbers, but it's still life and death. And so the situation there looks, from the Palestinian viewpoint, about as hopeless as it could look. You have very little international recognition, right? In fact, you try to have formal international recognition, and a certain country, I'm not going to name any names here, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but a large country north of Mexico will pop up the UN and say, no, you can't even scold them. You can't censor them. You can't censure them. So there's no way of getting formal diplomatic recognition. Informal is very difficult also. So there's a group called If Americans Knew, and this group has studied media coverage in that conflict. If you are an Israeli child and you're injured, you are between 16 and 23 times more likely to have that reported in the West, as would be the case if you were a Palestinian child. You know, I'm quite sure that if you did a DNA test, both the Palestinians and the Israelis would prove to be members of the same species. But the media would never know that. So that's perhaps why the Israelis have reacted with this very nervous twitch to the presence of ISM, and they were planning to have something called the Summer of Love in Israel, Palestine, that summer when those people were shot. So anyway, conspiracy theories are not the point, but the point is we're dealing with a conflict which probably looks about as hopeless as it can get. And I wouldn't have asked you this in the beginning of last semester. Last time I met with Sami Awad in this country, he was saying, we were giving him advice, like, why don't you organize blah, blah. He said, how are we going to organize when we can't even make a phone call? We have no phone service, we can't go out of our house, there's a curfew. Even the basic infrastructure of getting some kind of nonviolent movement going is very difficult or not present. So here's my challenge. Let's think over the next couple of weeks how we could go about solving that crisis. And to make our life a little easier, don't even bother thinking about what the politicians should do. Never mind. I mean, you might want to come up with a policy that you would present to them, but the fact is there's been a series of pretty good policies, any one of which would be better than what we have on the ground right now. So the question is not what should the negotiating teams be talking about, but rather how can we prepare the infrastructure, if you will, so that they have to talk about it. What would we do on the ground if we were A, a Palestinian, B, an Israeli, C, other member of the international community? Let's do some actual thinking about what mechanisms that might be. Of course, some of them will be not relevant because we're not there on the ground and we don't know what's happening. So we'll have to just run that risk and we can do some background study. But I remember saying to Mubarak Awad that he shouldn't make such a big fuss about waving the Palestinian flag because it was just a symbol. He laughed. He's very polite. So all he did was laugh. But in fact, I was completely wrong because it's a defiant mechanism that's created a lot of energy and focus. And my not being there, I didn't realize that. Okay, did you still have a comment? Okay. All right, so what I'm going to try to do is, in about 25 minutes, get through an overview of where I think the theory of nonviolence has come to, and then we're going to hear from our friend Paul on a variety of topics. The last part of our course, this is Unit 5, in case anyone asks you. Your parents say, are you making good use of all this money? Say, oh yes, Mommy, we're on Unit 5 in the nonviolence course. Yes, we're calling it nonviolent culture, and it really covers the whole thing. So it'll be certain amount of repetition, right? For example, in the reader, you'll be reading an overview of the color revolutions. We've already looked into those revolutions, what caused them to happen, and so forth. But now, okay, reread that stuff from the point of view not just of what happened, but what people are saying about it. How is it being conceptualized? How is it being framed? That'll bring us into the culture area. So I'm going to be talking about the theory itself, or how we understand nonviolence today, and about how it fits into the Great Turning project, which is the attempt to conceptualize how we would completely turn this thing around and have a whole new culture, economy, and so on and so forth. And I don't think that that's the big picture and we're the small picture. What I think is that this is like a holograph, not like a photograph. In other words, if you pick up nonviolence and use it as a focus, you can get to everything. Similarly, if you pick up the economy and use it as a focus, you can get to everything. You will eventually discover if you want a just economy, you have to have nonviolence. But my thing is I start with the nonviolence part. I don't know why because I hated violence because I was the smallest kid in my school. I don't know what caused all of this, but this is my approach anyway. Okay, so where are we? Yeah, I'm going to try talking about what is the state of the art in terms of thinking about nonviolence, and then we'll go into training and organization and things like that on Thursday. So as you know from reading my book and being intimately conversant with every paragraph in it, you are well aware, but it bears repetition, that as far as the English language is concerned, the word nonviolence was introduced into our language in 1926. And I know to you that sounds like, oh, that's a long time ago. But bear in mind that the word violence has been around as long as English has been around. And by another kind of contrast, ahimsa has been around in Sanskrit since the ancient period. So this is very important. Of course, the thing is more important than the word. We know that. But in order to grasp the thing, partly, we need a word. We need a handle to get hold of it. So that's a very important development. Now, the way human beings learn and the way human groups learn is really not well understood. Human beings have been defined as that species that can learn anything. I think that's true. I would say human being is a species that can learn anything, but there's some things that it won't. And I wish it would. In the Rhone Valley in France, there was a drought that lasted for a long time. It lasted long enough that 5 generations of beavers came and went. When the water, I told you once before, the water level in the Rhone was so low that they could not build dams for 5 generations. And then, lo and behold, the rains came, the river rose, and the beavers immediately started building dams again. So how did they know this? They did not Google it. They did not, look up, take out their manual.